Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. The Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is not just a castle, it's the very heart of the magical world of Harry Potter. Many of us have dreamed of receiving that owl with an acceptance letter, and the films allowed us to get at least a glimpse of that dream. To see the school's halls and grounds, even if only on screen. But do we really know everything about Hogwarts? As is often the case, the film adaptations left out many details known only to those who read the books. Today, I'll uncover what the movies hid, and perhaps you'll see the magical school in a whole new light. Enjoy the video! Number 1. Muggles can't see Hogwarts. One of the school's most mysterious features is its invisibility to ordinary people. Hogwarts is protected by powerful enchantments that keep it hidden from Muggle eyes. Any non-magical person who stumbles too close sees nothing but ruins and a terrifying warning. Do not enter! Unsafe area! This detail was briefly mentioned in Goblet of Fire when Hermione explains, "It's bewitched," said Hermione. "If a Muggle looks at it, all they see is a ruined old castle with a sign over the entrance saying, 'Danger. Do not enter. Unsafe.'" To a film-only viewer this might seem minor, but in the wizarding world, such enchantments are essential. They protect both secrecy and safety. Number 2. Muggle technology is forbidden. Modern kids raised with smartphones and the internet would feel like they'd stepped back in time at Hogwarts. No phones, laptops, headphones, or social media. The high concentration of magic in the castle simply disables all electronics. J.K. Rowling explained that the magical atmosphere disrupts electricity. This is subtly confirmed in Goblet of Fire. All those things that Muggles use instead of magic, electricity, computers, radar, and all that, well, they all go haywire around Hogwarts. There's too much magic in the air. The films ignored this entirely, even though it highlights just how isolated the magical world is from the Muggle one and how unique Hogwarts truly is. Number 3. Who feeds the students? The grand feasts in Hogwarts' Great Hall are a visual delight, but they also raise a question: who's preparing all that food? The answer is hidden underground. In the school's kitchens, house elves work tirelessly, making every dish that then magically appears on the tables above. Their labor remains unseen, just like the injustice of their servitude. Hermione, deeply disturbed by this, starts SPAW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. Yet the Goblet of Fire film omitted this entire subplot, leaving out an important conversation about freedom, equality, and the hidden cost of comfort. Number 4. Where is the Hufflepuff common room? Hufflepuff is often unfairly dismissed as a fallback house for those who didn't make it into the others, but that's a misconception. One detail mentioned in the books, but never shown in the films, is the location of the Hufflepuff common room. To get in, students pass through a portrait near the kitchens. Convenient, isn't it? Hufflepuffs are the first to reach the food when hunger strikes. Warmth, kindness, and good meals. That's real Hufflepuff magic. Number 5. Why does the Whomping Willow exist? At first glance, the Whomping Willow seems like a pointless danger. It lashes out violently and can seriously injure anyone who gets too close. The films barely explain its purpose. But the tree serves a crucial function. It guards the secret passage to the Shrieking Shack where Remus Lupin, a werewolf, could safely endure his transformations. Dumbledore, with his characteristic compassion and cleverness, planted this dangerous tree specifically to protect Lupin. In Prisoner of Azkaban, this backstory is only briefly touched upon. Viewers who haven't read the book are unlikely to grasp the significance of this violent guardian and the painful history it hides. Number 6. Astronomy classes are a big deal. Astronomy at Hogwarts is quiet magic. While spells burst and cauldrons bubble elsewhere, here the learning happens under stars. In the Philosopher's Stone, Harry climbs the cold stone stairs each Wednesday at midnight. At the top of the tallest tower, the class gathers in silence. They chart constellations, squint through telescopes, and scratch notes on fluttering parchment. It's a moment of stillness, and it matters. Every Wednesday at midnight, Rowling writes, they climbed up to the top of the tallest tower to study the stars. The rhythm of the stars becomes part of their education. But in the films, this world disappears. Professor Sinistra never teaches a single class. The astronomy tower is reduced to a location for a death. We never see students gazing at planets or Harry struggling to stay awake while sketching Mars. Yet astronomy is a required subject through the 5th year. It's even part of the OWL exams. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry is taking his nighttime practical when Hagrid is attacked below, his telescope shaking as he watches. The magic of the stars and the weight they carry in Hogwarts life is lost in silence on screen. Number 7. Hogwarts ghosts matter more than you think. The ghosts of Hogwarts are more than floating decorations. They carry memory, pain, and wisdom. In the films, they drift silently through the background or offer brief moments of comic relief. But in the books, they speak, they mourn, and they guide. Nearly Headless Nick isn't just a house mascot. He's a witness to centuries of magic, and he understands loss in ways the living often can't. After Sirius Black dies, Harry is swallowed by grief. No one seems to understand, but Nick does. In Order of the Phoenix, he explains why some souls become ghosts and others don't. He admits he fears death, that's why he lingers. His honesty gives Harry a kind of answer, even if it's not the one he wanted. In that moment, Nick isn't a joke, he's a mirror, and his presence becomes a bridge between life and what waits beyond it. Other ghosts hold similar depth. The Bloody Baron's silence masks a violent past. The Grey Lady, Helena Ravenclaw, holds the key to one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. It's her story that leads Harry to the lost diadem. Without her, the battle might have ended differently. These ghosts are not echoes, they are history with eyes and voices. The films give them shadows, the books give them souls. Number 8. The structure of Hogwarts exams. Exams at Hogwarts are not just tests, they're full-blown magical challenges that demand both brains and bravery. The ordinary wizarding levels and the nastily exhausting wizarding tests are central moments in the students' lives. The films barely touch on this, but in the books these exams shape futures. Hermione begins preparing for her OWLs months in advance. She creates color-coded study schedules, memorizes spell theory, and loses sleep to be ready. The exams themselves are intense. Students must perform spells under pressure. They demonstrate practical magic before ministry-appointed examiners. During the Defense Against the Dark Arts OWL, Harry is asked to cast a shield charm. He succeeds, sending the examiner flying. In Order of the Phoenix, the pressure becomes overwhelming. As the exams approach, Fred and George launch fireworks through the school. The chaos mirrors the emotional stress the students face. These tests are more than academics. They are milestones. Hermione's top scores reflect her discipline. Ron's struggles show his insecurities. And Harry, even under Umbridge's oppressive rule, pushes through. The books let us feel that weight, each wand movement, each scroll of parchment, each anxious glance. In the films, those moments disappear. But in the pages, they define what it means to grow up in the world of magic. Number 9. How do Hogwarts letters find children? In the films, the moment a Hogwarts letter arrives feels like pure magic. Owls flood the Dursleys' living room, envelopes flutter down the chimney, but no one ever explains how the school even knew about Harry, or how the letter knew exactly where he was, down to the cupboard under the stairs. That mystery is left untouched. Yet in the books, and confirmed by J.K. Rowling, there is a system as old as Hogwarts itself. Inside the castle, in a hidden room, sits a large, dusty book, bound in dragon hide. Beside it floats a quill that never touches ink. This is the Book of Admittance and the Quill of Acceptance. Whenever a magical child is born, the book snaps shut, and the quill attempts to write the child's name. It will only succeed if the child shows a clear sign of magic, even something tiny, a levitating toy, a window, shattering in fear. If the quill succeeds, the name is added to the list no matter how young the child is. This is how Harry's name appeared in the book the moment he performed unintentional magic as a baby. Years later, Professor McGonagall, who oversees admissions, consulted the book and saw his name, like thousands before his. She sent the letter on time, knowing exactly when his 11th birthday would arrive. The same happened for Hermione Granger, a muggle-born who surprised everyone when her magical ability emerged, yet the Quill recognized her long before she knew she was different. This enchanted system never fails. Letters find their recipients no matter where they are. When the Dursleys tried to flee with Harry hiding on a rock in the middle of the sea, the owl still delivered his invitation. That letter wasn't just paper and ink, it was a promise, sealed in magic, and behind it stood a centuries-old enchantment that watched over every witch and wizard before their journey began. Number 10. Talking portraits are not just decoration. The moving portraits in the films are charming. They sing, snore, and offer the occasional joke. But in the books they hold power, real power. These paintings are more than magical decor. They carry the echoes of their subjects' minds. They give advice, pass messages, and watch over the school like sentinels in gilded frames. After Dumbledore's death, his portrait appears in the headmaster's office. It doesn't just sit silently, it speaks, it advises, it mourns. Snape, now headmaster, consults the portrait, and during Harry's final year, the same portrait offers critical help. It tells Snape where to place the sword of Gryffindor so that Harry can find it when the time is right. This is not a trick of art. It is strategy, passed from canvas to reality. Some portraits travel between frames. Phineas Nigellus Black, former headmaster and ancestor of Sirius, moves from Grimmauld Place to Hogwarts and back again. He eavesdrops. He delivers messages to Dumbledore's army. In the Deathly Hallows, Hermione uses his portrait to learn what's happening in the school while they're on the run. Phineas Nigellus had taken up residence in the portrait that hung in her beaded bag. He was an unwelcome ally, but an essential one. The films never touch this depth. The portraits become background noise, but in the books they are threads in the school's secret network, ancient voices living in paint, watching, listening, guiding the next generation through war, memory, and silence. They don't just hang on the wall, they whisper in the dark. Number 11. Hogwarts wasn't always safe. Hogwarts in the films often looks like a dream, a towering castle under soft light, floating candles, warm feasts, and smiling professors. But the books tell a different story. The castle is ancient. Its walls remember blood. Behind every moving staircase, there's a memory of something dark. Safety, in Rowling's Hogwarts, is never guaranteed. The death of Moaning Myrtle is one of the earliest shadows. She wasn't just a ghost with a high-pitched voice in a bathroom. She was a murdered student, killed by the basilisk when Tom Riddle opened the Chamber of Secrets. Her body was found cold on the tiled floor, her glasses crooked beside her. It happened inside the school, within its very heart, a child dead, and the school covered it up for decades. The Triwizard Tournament only deepens that danger. Cedric Diggory was smart, capable, and kind, but all his talent meant nothing when Voldemort returned. Cedric died in a flash of green light on Hogwarts grounds. No duel, no warning, just a boy killed for being in the wrong place. Dumbledore's face after that moment, drawn, tired, haunted, reflected what the school had become, not a sanctuary, a battlefield in disguise. Even the final battle doesn't shake the film illusion completely. In the book, Hogwarts crumbles, Fred Weasley dies, Remus and Tonks fall, leaving their son orphaned. Lavender Brown is mauled. The Great Hall turns into a place of mourning. Dumbledore had warned everyone. Hard times were coming, and Hogwarts, for all its beauty, could never stop the darkness from seeping in. Soon we must all face the choice, he said, between what is right and what is easy. Number 12. Why don't students wear robes in the films? In the first Harry Potter films, the students at Hogwarts walked the halls in flowing robes, just like they did in the books. The visual was striking, black school cloaks swirling behind them as they climbed stairs or crossed the Great Hall. But somewhere around the prisoner of Azkaban, things quietly changed. By the Goblet of Fire, Harry was wearing zip-up hoodies. Hermione had ditched her robes for jeans and sneakers. Ron could be seen in checkered shirts and wool cardigans. The world began to look a little too familiar. In the books, robes were more than a dress code. They were a cultural line in the sand. Wizards didn't just wear them in school, they wore them in public, even when it made them look ridiculous to muggles. In the Goblet of Fire, when Arthur Weasley takes Harry to the Quidditch World Cup, he shows up in a pair of pinstriped trousers and a long, dark green cloak that hung down to his ankles. Later, wizards in the crowd sport kilts with ponchos, nightgowns tucked into boots. The absurdity isn't just for comedy, it's world-building. It tells us magic doesn't blend, it doesn't try to. J.K. Rowling made it clear that robes were daily wear. Hogwarts students didn't just wear them to class, they wore them everywhere. In The Philosopher's Stone, she writes, they were all in their long black robes. The idea was that robes marked the magical from the mundane. They gave Hogwarts a timeless feel, no technology, no denim, no distractions. But as the films went on, the costume department modernized the characters. Suddenly Hermione was studying with a pencil. Harry was brooding in a hoodie. The enchanted castle began to feel a little too much like a regular boarding school. Why did this happen? Filmmakers wanted audiences to relate. They wanted viewers, especially younger ones, to see themselves in the characters. Robes, for all their charm, created distance. So they went with jumpers and ties, skirts and blazers, until Hogwarts uniforms looked like something straight from a British prep school catalogue. But something important got lost in the trade. The robes weren't just fabric, they were identity. By removing them, the films blurred the boundary between magic and the world we know, and part of what made Hogwarts feel truly otherworldly quietly vanished. Number 13. Moving staircases are a daily nightmare. There is a detail about Hogwarts that the films barely grazed, a detail so vital, so chaotic, and so hilariously inconvenient that it shaped the everyday life of every student who ever dared to care about punctuality. The staircases, not just the grand sweeping ones shown in passing scenes, not just the shifting platforms rendered with CGI brilliance, but the deeply enchanted, often treacherous and sometimes outright malicious staircases that turned Hogwarts Castle into a labyrinth of unpredictability. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the narration offers a glimpse into this magical mayhem. There were 142 staircases at Hogwarts, wide, sweeping ones, narrow, rickety ones, some that led somewhere different on a Friday, some with a vanishing step halfway up that you had to remember to jump. The films took this piece of lore and transformed it into a visual wonder, a moving staircase, elegant and fluid, the kind that stirs awe. But they never showed Hermione Granger racing to class with a schedule down to the minute, stepping onto the wrong stair and finding herself spinning 90 degrees toward the dungeons. Or Ron Weasley, late for potions, trapped on a staircase that turned into a slide just as he leapt over the trick step. The true horror of these staircases lay not in their enchantment, but in their absolute disdain for order. The staircase just outside the Charms corridor, for example, was notorious for reorienting itself when students were halfway across it. Parvati Patil once spent 20 minutes going up and down the same stretch, only to realize she had been caught in a staircase loop that only resolved itself after she shouted a hex word in frustration. Peeves the poltergeist found this staircase especially amusing and often encouraged it to spin while dropping water balloons from above. The 7th floor staircase near the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy was perhaps the worst offender. Known among Ravenclaws as the traitor stair, it often refused to extend unless one was wearing mismatched socks. When a second-year student named Orla Quirk attempted to cross it wearing perfectly coordinated shoes, the entire structure folded into the wall. She had to be rescued by Professor Flitwick, who appeared not with concern but with a sigh, muttering that this happened every year. And then there were the vanishing steps, malicious voids that appeared at random. Seamus Finnegan learned about them the hard way during his first week. He had been trying to follow Dean Thomas to defence against the dark arts when his left foot sank into what should have been solid stone. The step swallowed him up to the knee, and his textbooks scattered across the floor. Dean had to summon Filch, who arrived with a long rope and a scowl, muttering something about blasted children and their blasted limbs. But the castle didn't just trip you up, it played favourites. It's no coincidence that Draco Malfoy always seemed to arrive at Professor Snape's classroom with an air of smug calm, while Harry and Ron barreled in, gasping and dishevelled. It wasn't luck, it was the staircases. The Slytherins, with their dungeons on the lower levels, grew accustomed to the quirks of the ground-level stairways, many of which behaved more reliably. The Gryffindors, living in a tower with some of the most volatile staircases in the school, learned to adapt. But being on the top floor had its toll, especially when the castle itself decided to rebel. Neville Longbottom became something of a folk hero among the first years for his battle with a spiral staircase near the astronomy tower. The staircase, for reasons unknown, detested nighttime climbs and would spin violently if more than one person attempted it after midnight. During one fateful astronomy lesson, Neville found himself clinging to the banister as it whirled, slowly spiralling him back to the second floor. He was late to class and covered in bruises, but he managed to memorize the spell that halted the motion for exactly 8 seconds. It wasn't elegant, but it earned him respect. These moving staircases also possessed a bizarre sense of timing. As the narration in Philosopher's Stone pointed out, some led somewhere different on a Friday. This wasn't metaphorical. The west-facing staircase near the library transformed every Friday into a direct chute to the kitchens. No one knew why, and no enchantment seemed to reverse it. Hermione Granger once tracked the staircase's magical residue for an entire week and concluded that its Friday migration was tied to the castle's original blueprint, specifically the day when the founders would feast together. This tiny mystery became part of her growing list of things at Hogwarts that defy logic. And then there was the sudden collapse. Not a breaking or falling apart, but a calculated transformation. Certain staircases, like the one leading to the third-floor corridor where Fluffy once lived, had the unnerving habit of flattening into slides. Harry once witnessed a group of fourth years, laden with books and carrying delicate potion samples, suddenly careening downward on their stomachs. Their screams echoed through the halls, their vials shattered at the bottom, and Professor Snape gave each of them detention, not for tardiness, but for reckless transport of unstable ingredients. For anyone who cared about arriving on time, Hogwarts was a battlefield. Professor McGonagall was one of the few who seemed to understand the inherent madness of the staircases. Her classroom, located in the Transfiguration corridor, was situated with strategic genius, just beyond the most stable series of flights in the entire castle. It's said she requested this placement deliberately after years of watching students arrive late through no fault of their own. While she was strict, she never penalized a student for arriving breathless and wide-eyed with chalk dust on their robes. The staircases, she once told Hermione in Order of the Phoenix, do not concern themselves with timetables. Number 14, hidden rooms. Few students know about. Hidden within the vast enchanted walls of Hogwarts are rooms that defy maps, logic, and even memory itself. While the films reduced the school's complexity to its grand staircases, grander halls, and familiar classrooms, the books whisper of corners unseen, spaces untouched, and chambers known only to those who stumble upon them, or are chosen to find them. The Room of Requirement is not the only such space. It is simply the only one that refused to keep its secret. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, there's a fleeting moment that few paused to consider. Harry, desperate to escape from Severus Snape's gaze, slips into a small, dark cupboard hidden in the corridor. This is no ordinary storage closet. It is described as a narrow space barely wide enough for him to turn around, and its location is not clearly defined, deliberately obscured. What is this cupboard doing there, invisible to teachers and caretakers alike? And why is it empty, as though waiting? That tiny space is the kind of room Hogwarts creates for necessity, not for function. These are spaces of emotion, not logic. They appear not on schematics, but on instinct. They pulse with the castle's sentience. Just as the room of requirement rearranges itself for different purposes, these little-known rooms flicker in and out of the physical world. The cupboard hides Harry not just from Snape, but from the burdens of prophecy. For a moment, it lets him breathe. It's a pocket of silence created by a castle that understands pain. Then there's the tower room where Luna Lovegood seeks solace. In Order of the Phoenix, after a punishing day, Harry finds her there, alone, feeding scraps to a thestral outside the window. "They're nice," she says, her voice calm. "They can see right through you." This room is never named. It's not part of any formal floor plan. It simply exists like a heartbeat in stone high atop the Ravenclaw Tower. Luna didn't find it by accident. The castle offered it to her, a place for a girl whose mother died and whose schoolmates mocked her. In that silent eyrie, the wind hums with understanding. The films skipped this entirely. We never see Luna in her quiet solitude. We are never shown the room's view, the endless sweep of the forbidden forest, the silvery sliver of the black lake at dawn. The camera never lingers on the way Luna leans forward just slightly, as though she might leap into the sky, a creature of clouds. But in the book, the atmosphere of this place is powerful. It says something fundamental about Luna, but even more about Hogwarts. It responds to need. It does not ignore sorrow. In the Chamber of Secrets, the entrance is famously hidden in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, but that entire lavatory is itself a secret. It's a disused, decaying space. No girls go there. Even teachers avoid it. There's an implication that Myrtle's endless weeping makes it unbearable. But the truth may run deeper. The bathroom stands as a marker, a silent guardian of a darker truth, the presence of Slytherin's monster. But what's remarkable is how easily Hermione and Harry claim the space. In Goblet of Fire, Hermione chooses Myrtle's bathroom to brew Polyjuice Potion. She picks it not just for privacy, but because she senses it won't betray them. "It's not used much," she says. That's code for "the room is loyal." That bathroom, once desecrated by death, becomes a crucible of rebellion. Polyjuice is illegal for students. Brewing it takes weeks. Steam fills the mirrors, bottles of ingredients, lacewing flies, powdered bicorn horn, shredded boomslang skin, clutter the sinks. And Myrtle watches, sometimes with glee, sometimes with suspicion. She is part of the room now, a spectral witness. The space has changed. It belongs to secrets now. It was once a crime scene. Now it is a lab. This transformation is quietly alchemical. Hogwarts lets rooms evolve. Elsewhere in the castle, there's the trophy room, a gallery of gleaming reminders of past glories, tucked away near the armor gallery. Though not exactly hidden, it too is often empty. In Philosopher's Stone, Harry is tricked by Draco into a midnight duel and finds himself running through unfamiliar corridors. He ducks into the trophy room to hide, marveling at the dusty plaques and long-forgotten names. The glass cases glinted in the moonlight, the book says, and Harry caught a glimpse of himself in a shield. But what matters more is what the room doesn't do. It doesn't reveal him. That night, the trophy room becomes a shelter. Peeves cannot sense him there. Filch walks past it. Even Snape doesn't enter. A room full of trophies becomes a haven for a boy who has no medals. Hogwarts understands irony. The school offers him a room full of accolades the same night he is hunted for breaking rules. The room becomes a commentary. Then there's the Transfiguration classroom, which we always see as stern and practical, desks in rows, blackboard behind. But the books hint at something more. Professor McGonagall's teaching is exacting, but the room changes often. In Chamber of Secrets, it is described differently from the first book. Tables are larger, windows are missing. Later, it appears with curious symbols etched into the stone floor, none of which are ever explained. These subtle shifts suggest a classroom that reconfigures itself depending on the spellwork taught. McGonagall doesn't comment on it, but it's there in the text. Hogwarts breathes even in the academic wings. Number 15, the strange Hogwarts grading system. In the dim glow of the enchanted ceiling, students hurried through the halls of Hogwarts, their robes trailing behind like shadows in candlelight. Between lessons on transfiguration and charms, few ever paused to wonder about the grades they were working toward, because unlike the neatly ordered A through F system familiar to Muggle children, Hogwarts offered something quite different. A system as enigmatic as magic itself, less about numbers, more about understanding. The films, dazzling as they were, glossed over this detail, yet in the books it defined a student's fate just as much as their wand or house allegiance. Hermione Granger, brilliant and endlessly curious, was perhaps the most visibly concerned with academic performance, but even she never once waved a parchment adorned with a tidy percentage or a letter grade like A+. Instead, when her OWL results arrived in Order of the Phoenix, she examined them not for numbers, but for words. Outstanding, exceeds expectations, acceptable. Words that did not simply quantify her knowledge, but qualified it. She received 10 OWLs, 7 outstandings, and 3 exceeds expectations. It was a moment of pride, but also a reflection of how magical education placed value on mastery and depth, not just right or wrong. Harry, on the other hand, wasn't always so fortunate. His journey through academia was uneven. While he showed talent in defense against the dark arts, thanks in no small part to his own experiences with dark creatures and curses, other subjects challenged him. When his OWL results arrived, he found an outstanding in defense, but a mere acceptable in potions. This grade sealed his future. "I'm not taking potions anymore," he muttered, realizing Snape's NEWT level class required an outstanding. It wasn't about how many questions he got right. It was about whether he met Snape's rigorous, often biased expectations. This grading system reveals something vital about the wizarding world. Precision is not king, comprehension is. To earn an outstanding wasn't just to get every spell right. It meant excellence in magical theory, application, and control. And exceeds expectations wasn't a failure, it was solid, commendable work, and acceptable, still good enough to move forward in most magical careers. The failing marks, however, poor, dreadful, and troll, carried a sting of finality, especially troll, the lowest possible grade, suggesting one's performance was so abysmal it was akin to a troll trying to write a potion essay. This nuanced scale shaped not just report cards, but the very psyche of the students. When Percy Weasley received 12 OWLs, he boasted about it endlessly, but he never listed the number of outstandings. The assumption was that Percy, ever the stickler for rules and ambition, likely earned them, but even if not, his number of subjects alone was enough to signal aptitude. The emphasis wasn't on perfection, but range and depth. This differed starkly from the Muggle system, where 98% is better than 91%. Here, a student who scored outstanding in fewer subjects might be seen as more focused or specialized than one who managed acceptables across the board. In this light, the film's absence of grading systems feels like a missed opportunity. Without it, Hogwarts becomes a stage for whimsical lessons and magical mischief, not a functioning academic institution. Yet in the books, grades had weight. When Ron Weasley received his OWLs, his delight over an exceeds expectations in defense was real. He had passed, that was enough. It made him feel competent, and more than that, it made him feel he could become an aura, a dream previously dismissed. The idea of grading through descriptive labels rather than numbers also reflects a larger theme in J.K. Rowling's universe, the unpredictability of potential. Neville Longbottom, so often doubted and mocked, managed and exceeds expectations in herbology, a sign not just of his green thumb, but of his growing confidence. He might never have topped a class in Muggle terms, but within this flexible, words-based system, he found room to shine. The magic lay not just in plants, but in being recognized for improving. This system, too, left room for interpretation, and sometimes injustice. Severus Snape was infamous for grading with a bias sharper than his tongue. Harry believed, perhaps rightly, that Snape would never grant him more than an acceptable in potions. The subjectivity of the system could be a blessing or a curse, sometimes both. Unlike a numerical score, a word could be debated, challenged, or misjudged. The films skipped this nuance. Without grades, the teachers' power over their students' futures seemed to end at detention and house points. But in truth, the stroke of a quill could deny someone their dream. Take the case of Fred and George Weasley, who abandoned exams altogether. Their departure from Hogwarts in Order of the Phoenix felt like rebellion, but also commentary. They knew the grades wouldn't reflect their brilliance, their creativity, their risk-taking, their business acumen. The ministry-approved system could not measure entrepreneurial genius. In their world, a troll on a charms test didn't matter as much as a product that made people laugh. It was a subtle reminder that not all magic is measurable. Even Professor McGonagall's sternness softened in the face of this complexity. When Harry approached her in Half-Blood Prince about continuing potions, she allowed Slughorn's more lenient policy of acceptables to prevail. It revealed that sometimes what counted wasn't the grade, but what a teacher believed a student could still become. "You did very well indeed in your Defense Against the Dark Arts OWL," she noted. The use of very well over a specific mark further emphasized the personalized nature of wizarding education. The OWLs and NEWTs, ordinary wizarding levels, and nastily exhausting wizarding tests also reinforced the gravity of assessments. Not every class required written evaluations, and not every subject had the same weight. Divination, for instance, was notoriously difficult to grade objectively. Professor Trelawney might hand out an outstanding for predicting someone's death, even if it never happened. Meanwhile, ancient runes demanded logical decoding. One was impressionistic, the other analytical. The grading terms spanned both, another reflection of the magical world's diversity. Grading in Hogwarts was also seasonal and tied to major transitions. When students received their OWL results, it wasn't just academic, it was life-defining. Careers hung in the balance. Harry's dream of becoming an Auror hinged on those words. "I'm going to become an Auror," he said with conviction, though the path was not smooth. The lack of a rigid, percentage-based scale meant that ambition could be nurtured if professors allowed it. Slughorn's flexibility gave Harry the chance to continue. The system was strict but not always inflexible. Number 16, the forgotten Hogwarts school song. There was a moment in the first book, easy to forget if you've only seen the films, that gave Hogwarts its most whimsical and authentic flavour. It was not a magical duel or a thrilling game of Quidditch. It wasn't a clever spell or a hidden chamber. It was a song, a simple school anthem presented with absurdity, sincerity, and a kind of magical warmth that could only have come from J.K. Rowling's early vision of Hogwarts. This moment, nestled into Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, happened during the first feast, a setting already soaked in wonder, but somehow made even more bizarre and charming by a burst of communal chaos. Dumbledore, ever the eccentric headmaster, rose before the golden plates had been touched. His speech was odd but brief, ending with the unforgettable "Nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak." And then, as the great hall fell into a silence of anticipation, he invited the students to sing the Hogwarts school song. Not with uniform precision or any established rhythm. no conductor raised a wand. Instead, every student was encouraged to sing the same lyrics, but to any tune they liked. And they did. Some launched into slow dirges, others into rousing marches, and a few into what must have been completely invented melodies. It was not harmonious, it was not polished, but it was perfect. Everyone finished the song at different times, Rowling writes. At last, only the Weasley twins were left singing it to a very slow funeral march. The final notes of their sombre version stretched awkwardly into the hall, clashing against the remnants of quicker tempos from the other students. And Dumbledore, in response, wiped away a tear of joy and proclaimed, "Ah, music, a magic beyond all we do here." That sentence alone, nestled in a seemingly comic moment, revealed an important truth about the nature of Hogwarts. This moment never made it into the films. In adapting the story for the screen, many things were left out: subplots, characters, and minor scenes. But this omission strikes a particularly curious chord. The school song was not just filler or fluff, it was a thematic note, harmonizing with the early tone of the books. Its absence in the films left Hogwarts just a little more solemn, a little more serious, and just a touch less human. Without it, the whimsical character of the school lost some of its glittering madness. The lyrics themselves are intentionally simple, almost laughably so. Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy Warty, Hogwarts. Teach us something, please. There's no grandeur, no pretense, no attempt at poetic complexity. It feels like a song written by children, for children, or at least for those who remember being children. But that's the point. Hogwarts is a school, after all. A place of learning, but also of belonging. A place where the strange becomes familiar and the absurd becomes tradition. The delivery method of the song, each student choosing their own tune, says everything about Dumbledore's philosophy. He wasn't just allowing chaos, he was encouraging expression. He understood that magic was not only in incantations or ancient runes, but in individuality and imagination. And what better way to symbolize that than through a song where unity is found in diversity? Fred and George's slow funeral march may have drawn laughs, but it also acted as a gentle satire. It reminded everyone that Hogwarts, for all its age and gravitas, was not above being silly. It was not a fortress of rigid order. It was a sanctuary for oddballs, dreamers and thinkers. It was a place where even the school song could be a joke and still be beautiful. Films, in trying to balance pacing and tone, leaned toward grandeur and spectacle. The feasts were there, and Dumbledore's speeches, though trimmed, still stood. But the song? Silenced. Perhaps the filmmakers feared it would be jarring. Perhaps they thought the humor wouldn't translate, or that the moment would break the seriousness of the scene. But the books never feared the absurd. Rowling's Hogwarts was not a cold, enchanted castle. It was alive. No scene captured that better than the first feast with the school song. Harry's first impression of Hogwarts was shaped by this. A boy who had grown up in a cupboard, who had been told he didn't belong, was suddenly seated at a table in a vast, magical hall, surrounded by talking portraits, floating candles, and singing students. And instead of being instructed in a stern, formal hymn, he was invited to participate in something mad and joyful. That moment told him, "You belong here. Not because you fit in, but because Hogwarts celebrates that you don't." There's a reason why Dumbledore calls music the greatest magic. It's not an offhand remark, it's a philosophy. It echoes later in the series when the power of love and sacrifice outweighs the darkest of spells. Music, like love, is unquantifiable. It moves people without logic. It binds without chains. Dumbledore sees that, and in that moment of cacophonous song, he sees the truth of his school. It is a place where the heart leads, not the wand. In the broader context of the wizarding world, this moment stands alone. There is no other reference to wizarding schools having songs, at least none sung in such a free-form, chaotic way. Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, when introduced in Goblet of Fire, arrive with theatricality and precision. Their discipline is evident, their entrance is choreographed. They might as well be military academies. But Hogwarts opens its arms to weirdness. The school song never appears again in the books. Like many of Dumbledore's quirks, it remains a one-time event, as if too special to repeat. That singularity adds to its charm. It's not a ritual, it's a moment, a brief explosion of ridiculous, unforgettable joy. It's a snapshot of Hogwarts before everything changes. Before the basilisk, before the Dementors, before the war, before the darkness overtakes the light. And maybe that's why it hurts a little more that the films ignored it. For all their visual majesty, they sometimes missed the heartbeats of the story. The quiet, odd moments that told us what kind of place Hogwarts really was. Not just a school of magic, but a home for misfits. A place where students sang lullabies and marches to the same words and laughed at how strange it all sounded. In that single paragraph about the Weasley twins dragging out the final line of the song, Rowling did what no special effect could. She made Hogwarts real. You could hear it. Not the words, but the spirit. Classroom with 4 houses, yes, but also a house of 400 voices, singing nonsense in harmony by being completely out of sync. Dumbledore's appreciation of that chaos wasn't just humorous, it was wise. He knew what was coming. He knew the world would demand order, sides, and sacrifice. But for that moment, he allowed joy. And he cried, not because it was funny, but because it was true. Because nothing else at Hogwarts, not even magic, could so purely express the hope that lived in that ancient castle. What might it have looked like on screen? One can imagine the camera panning across the hall, each student's lips moving to a different beat. Neville singing in a whispery soprano, Seamus shouting in rhythm with his fists, Hermione pursing her lips tightly as she follows a metronomic tune in her head. Draco perhaps mouthing the words without enthusiasm, and the twins deliberately dragging out each note for comedic effect. And then Dumbledore, eyes twinkling behind his half-moon glasses, gently wiping away a tear. It would have been unforgettable. The films gave us a visually stunning Hogwarts, but they rarely gave us a foolish one. And that is a shame, because foolishness is often the clearest sign of courage. It takes bravery to be ridiculous. It takes strength to sing when no one else is in tune. The school song was never about music. It was about defiance, against conformity, against silence, against sorrow. When Harry first arrived, he was scared and uncertain. But that song broke the ice of fear. It laughed in the face of tension. It said, "Here, you can be silly. Here, we don't mind if you sound different." That moment was healing. More healing than potions or spells. More magical than any artifact or beast. Even Ron, whose entire life had already been filled with wizarding customs, joined in with gusto. He didn't sneer or groan. He sang loudly, maybe off-key, maybe badly, but with pride, because for all his complaints later in the series, Ron was at home there, and the school song was part of that home. Hermione, always one to follow the rules, might have been flustered. No instructions on rhythm, no sheet music, but even she gave in, because Hogwarts, at its best, taught that following your own tune was not only acceptable, it was encouraged. That message, buried in laughter, meant everything. And the twins, oh, the twins, their funeral march was a performance, a joke, but also an embrace of freedom. They took the chaos and made it theatre, not out of mockery, but out of love. They were the soul of Hogwarts in that moment, brilliant, mischievous, and free. By the time the war came, Hogwarts became something else, a fortress, a battlefield, a memory. But the school song remained, in the background, a relic of better times, a reminder of what they were fighting for. A place where people sang nonsense together and were better for it. Hogwarts magic was never just in the moving staircases or bewitched ceilings. It was in the laughter, the awkward pauses, the imperfect harmonies. It was in the song that no one sang well, but everyone sang with heart. Number 17, class schedule, a real challenge for students. There was a silent rhythm in the stone veins of Hogwarts, an invisible clockwork hidden behind portraits, gargoyles, and shifting staircases. It ticked not with gears or bells, but with quills scratching parchment, potion cauldrons bubbling in distant dungeons, and the muffled groans of students sprinting through endless corridors. That rhythm was the Hogwarts class schedule, a merciless labyrinth of time slots, moving staircases, and subject clashes that tested the sanity of young witches and wizards more than any OWL. The films, in their visual splendor, whisked viewers from one magical scene to the next, skipping the trudging reality of day-to-day academic life. But the books, through J.K. Rowling's layered narrative, unveiled a harsher truth. The Hogwarts timetable wasn't merely a list of classes, it was a battle plan. For students like Hermione Granger, the schedule was a battlefield where logic bent under magical pressure, and simple attendance became a feat of sorcery. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione's academic ambition stretched the limits of time itself. Taking more subjects than could fit in a human day, she resorted to using a time turner, a magical device granted by Professor McGonagall and approved by the Ministry of Magic. "I've been turning it back so I can do hours over again," Hermione explained, when Harry and Ron discovered her secret. What this reveals is not just Hermione's drive, but the oppressive structure of the schedule. The only way to fully experience a Hogwarts education, it seemed, was to manipulate time itself. Students were not merely attending classes, they were navigating a living maze. While Muggle schools relied on structured buildings and linear floor plans, Hogwarts' magical architecture rendered any concept of standard classroom transitions laughable. The dungeons housed potions where Professor Snape lurked among cold stones and dripping moss. Students had to descend numerous levels, often encountering surprises such as vanishing steps or peeves blocking passageways to reach that dimly lit chamber. Then there was care of magical creatures, which often required leaving the castle entirely. Classes were held near the Forbidden Forest, where Hagrid introduced hippogriffs, blast-ended scroots, and bowtruckles. In Goblet of Fire, a brisk trek through the castle, across the lawns and near the forest edge, preceded each lesson. Such journeys became logistical nightmares when placed back-to-back with classes in the astronomy tower or the divination classroom, which was nestled at the top of a ladder-filled turret. The schedule didn't bend for geography. Ravenclaws, known for their wisdom, were particularly vocal about the inconsistencies. Cho Chang once complained to Marietta Edgecombe about how her divination class left her barely enough time to reach charms, especially when the staircases decided to move. "They're always flipping around when you're late," she muttered in Order of the Phoenix. These shifting passageways, seemingly sentient, became an unspoken part of the schedule's cruelty. A 10-minute walk could become a 20-minute detour if a staircase changed direction mid-transit. First years struggled most. Thrown into a world where portraits talked and doors asked riddles, they found themselves woefully unprepared for the demands of a magical timetable. In Philosopher's Stone, Harry and Ron's first week was described as exhausting. By Friday, Rowling wrote, Harry was feeling tired and sore. And this was not from duels or trolls. It was from racing between transfiguration, charms, and herbology with little idea of where anything was. Even subjects taught in the castle weren't easy to find. Professor Flitwick's charms classroom changed floors depending on the term. Professor Binns, the ghost who taught history of magic, would sometimes forget his room number entirely, gliding into the wrong classroom and droning on until a student corrected him. The castle itself played tricks, and the schedule bent around these illusions. Rooms vanished, doors turned to walls. One week you had arithmancy near the library, the next it was beside the owlery, for no discernible reason. Imagine attending double potions in the dungeon only to climb 7 floors immediately afterward for defense against the dark arts. That's what Gryffindors often faced in their third year. The lack of elevators or magical shortcuts made it all the more intense. Students sprinted panting and sweating, only to be chastised by professors for tardiness. Snape, ever the disciplinarian, showed no mercy. In Half-Blood Prince, he gave Harry and Ron detention for arriving seconds late, blaming their lack of discipline, never mind the detour they had to make thanks to a trick staircase. The scheduling also enforced subtle hierarchy. Advanced students, especially those in their NEWT years, faced even harsher timetables. When Harry entered 6th year, his potions schedule became complicated by the unexpected inclusion of Professor Slughorn. The Slug Club meetings and adjusted class times interfered with Quidditch practice and DA meetings. Rowling wrote that Harry felt his calendar was a war zone. Even magic had not solved the eternal problem of too much to do and too little time. Magical subjects posed their own timing challenges. Astronomy was held at midnight, requiring students to stay awake for lessons on star charts and planetary movements atop the tallest tower. On the other end of the clock, herbology began at dawn in the greenhouses, especially during spring when plants were at their most reactive. Some days, students had both, getting minimal sleep. It wasn't uncommon for older students to carry pepper-up potion just to stay conscious. Hermione's time-turner episode wasn't merely an individual quirk. It revealed a structural flaw in Hogwarts' educational system. Instead of spacing subjects logically or limiting enrollments, the school encouraged magical workarounds. This attitude bled into how students prioritized their health. Skipping meals or sleeping during History of Magic became survival tactics. After all, Professor Binns' monotone drone made napping possible, even mandatory. The films glossed over these details, painting Hogwarts as a dreamy, leisurely environment. But in the books, the schedule was a crucible. Students often missed breakfast due to early morning classes. Prefects, despite having added responsibilities, received no exceptions in scheduling. Percy Weasley, always punctual and self-important, once scolded younger students for clogging up the staircases and endangering the punctuality of others. The idea of time, never enough of it, was embedded in the daily grind. Luna Lovegood, with her ethereal calm, managed to remain unaffected. Yet even she was once seen running toward ancient runes, a book slipping from her bag and a dirigible plum bouncing against her ear. The Ravenclaw ideal of curiosity was challenged when your next class was on the opposite side of the castle, and you had 6 minutes to find it through walls that sometimes talked back. Then there was Quidditch. Practices were often scheduled late at night or early in the morning to avoid conflict with classes. Oliver Wood, in Chamber of Secrets, practically begged McGonagall for schedule exemptions, calling it a matter of house pride. She didn't budge. The academic schedule was ironclad. Quidditch, despite its sacred place in Hogwarts culture, had to work around it. Teachers, too, were prisoners of the timetable. Professor Trelawney rarely left her tower, partly due to her fragile state and partly because descending from the divination room was a workout in itself. Hagrid had to plan elaborate trips for each Care of Magical Creatures class, coordinating dangerous beasts and student safety while accounting for shifting class slots. His sighs about bloody schedules echoed his desire to teach more freely, yet he, like the students, was bound by the system. Snape's dungeon, Flitwick's roving classroom, McGonagall's transfiguration space that demanded silence and precision, all were carefully assigned, but the transitions between them made life miserable. In Order of the Phoenix, when students began organizing Dumbledore's army, their biggest challenge wasn't secrecy or spellwork, it was finding time. With classes, Quidditch, and homework, Rowling wrote, there was hardly a spare moment. The schedule didn't only exhaust bodies, it tested friendships. Ron once snapped at Hermione for dragging him to arithmancy study groups after a draining day of potions and history of magic. The schedule created tension, forced choices, revealed limits. When Harry skipped divination to visit Hagrid, he risked detention. When Neville missed herbology due to getting stuck in a moving staircase, Professor Sprout took pity, but only once. Even the library, Hogwarts's sanctuary of knowledge, was affected. Madam Pince enforced strict hours, often clashing with late classes. Students had to juggle dinner, homework and restricted section research, frequently stretching themselves thin. The Time Turner seemed less a magical artifact and more a symbol of systemic failure. What emerged through the books and was lost in cinematic gloss was the raw reality of magical education. Hogwarts was no idle fairyland. It was a pressure cooker. Each corridor held not just secrets, but deadlines. Each staircase hid not just mystery, but minutes wasted. The schedule did not forgive. It demanded resilience, adaptability, and magical grit. And so the ticking rhythm of Hogwarts was not set by clocks, but by students' rushing footsteps, skipped meals, and the scratch of quills racing against the calendar. The schedule was not merely a list, it was a test of will, and those who survived it earned more than grades. They earned the right to call themselves witches and wizards. Number 18. Bathrooms with a magical past. In the depths of Hogwarts Castle, beyond the sweeping staircases and enchanted corridors, lies a forgotten chapter of magical architecture, one that the films never dared to explore. The bathrooms of Hogwarts, appearing mundane with their marble sinks and porcelain stalls, conceal far more than the eye can see. What seems to be a nod to Muggle plumbing is in fact a legacy of arcane ingenuity and wizarding adaptation, deeply tied to the history of magic itself. The films offered us flickering candles, dancing staircases and bewitched ceilings, but they omitted one of the most peculiar and telling aspects of the wizarding world, the magical evolution of sanitation. Long before the advent of toilets and plumbing at Hogwarts, witches and wizards used a far more curious approach to relieving themselves. In a 2019 entry from J.K. Rowling on Pottermore, it was revealed that before adopting Muggle-style sewage systems, magical folk simply did their business wherever they stood and vanished the evidence with a flick of their wand. It sounds almost laughable, but this detail paints a vivid picture of early wizarding customs, practical, efficient, and utterly unapologetic. This ancient habit speaks to the magical world's different relationship with bodily functions, one that defies Muggle squeamishness and embraces a more liberated magical solution. The transition from this unstructured approach to a full bathroom system occurred centuries after the founding of Hogwarts. The castle itself, built around 990 AD by the four founders, Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, was originally devoid of anything resembling modern plumbing. What changed this was not just a shift in magical hygiene, but the influence of Muggle inventions making their way into the wizarding world. By the 18th century, witches and wizards started integrating Muggle ideas into magical infrastructure. Hogwarts, always a place of blended enchantment and innovation, slowly embraced the concept of lavatories. However, these weren't ordinary bathrooms. As demonstrated by the secret entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, hidden within the second-floor girls' bathroom, the lavatories of Hogwarts often served dual purposes. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, we learn that the snake-carved entrance lies beneath a sink, unnoticed by all except Parselmouths. The bathroom itself is abandoned, haunted by moaning Myrtle, a ghost doomed to linger near the place of her death. This alone marks the bathrooms as more than places of sanitation. They are thresholds to ancient secrets, repositories of forgotten spells, and occasionally battlefields of magical confrontation. The books emphasize that these places are uniquely tied to the castle's enchanted geography. The second-floor bathroom is described in Chamber of Secrets as a large, square room with high, arched windows, a cracked and spotted mirror, and old stone sinks. Though seemingly dilapidated, it contains the concealed entrance to one of the most dangerous chambers ever built at Hogwarts. Salazar Slytherin himself constructed the chamber beneath the school, using ancient magic that entwined architecture and bloodline. That he chose a plumbing fixture to hide its entrance is no accident. Plumbing in Hogwarts is not only functional, it is symbolic. Consider too the prefect's bathroom introduced in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Far from a standard school restroom, this opulent chamber features a swimming pool-sized tub with taps in every colour, each releasing water scented or enchanted in a different way. The bath was rectangular and large enough to swim in, rolling rights, and had a diving board at one end. This fantastical setting where Harry works out the riddle of the golden egg is another example of how deeply magical the sanitation spaces of Hogwarts can be. The bathroom is not merely a convenience, it is a puzzle box, a place for contemplation and discovery. The glowing mermaid on the stained glass window seems to whisper secrets, emphasizing that even bathwater in Hogwarts may carry a whisper of enchantment. Even the ghosts of Hogwarts are intimately tied to its bathroom lore. Myrtle Elizabeth Warren, better known as Moaning Myrtle, was a Muggle-born witch who died in the 1940s when Tom Riddle released the Basilisk. Her haunting presence in the girls' bathroom is more than tragic, it is informative. Through Myrtle's posthumous residency, we understand that Hogwarts bathrooms are often liminal spaces, where life and death brush shoulders and where magic lingers in the grout and steam. The strange interplay between magic and plumbing is not a mere aesthetic detail, it's a reflection of the castle's living, breathing nature. Hogwarts is described many times as having a will of its own. Doors vanish and reappear, staircases shift without warning, and hidden rooms surface at the command of desire. It is not unthinkable, then, that bathrooms, especially those long integrated into the castle's magical framework, serve purposes beyond hygiene. The very existence of secret tunnels beneath sinks, as well as vanishing spells replacing waste management in earlier eras, suggests an architecture that grows, adapts, and conceals with purpose. It is fascinating that Muggle-borns like Hermione Granger, who would be accustomed to modern plumbing, never openly question or comment on the magical restrooms of Hogwarts. Perhaps this is a subtle nod to how effortlessly the magical world assimilates Muggle inventions, weaving them into older spells and enchantments. Perhaps the sinks, toilets, and showers are not what they seem. Maybe each fixture is laced with subtle charms for cleaning, refreshing, and even healing. The absence of explicit magical mechanics in the films turns these rooms into mere set dressing, losing the strange, delightful texture Rowling wove into the books and additional materials. Another example is the Room of Requirement, which, while not explicitly a bathroom, once manifests as a massive chamber filled with chamber pots and toilets. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore mentions that he once stumbled upon a room full of chamber pots. This small but telling moment reveals that the castle can produce sanitation facilities on command, independent of plumbing or architectural design. The Room of Requirement, therefore, functions like a magical 3D printer, conjuring full washrooms when necessary. It reaffirms that Hogwarts does not rely on infrastructure in the Muggle sense, but on magical will and need. When reading between the lines, even the Marauders map hints at the importance of bathrooms in Hogwarts' magical geography. In Prisoner of Azkaban, when Harry tracks people on the map, the locations include not just classrooms and corridors, but bathrooms as well. The inclusion of such spaces on a sentient map further proves their role as critical junctions in the school's mystical cartography. A character might vanish into a bathroom and emerge elsewhere, suggesting the presence of old passageways and shifting stone that only magic could explain. Bathing and hygiene in the magical world have always possessed layers of enchantment and practicality. Wizards enchant their hair to stay styled or use spells like Scourgify to clean their clothes, their cauldrons, and even themselves. It would follow that bathrooms at Hogwarts are not just fixtures of hygiene, but places where spells interact with the body and space. They may, for example, host protective wards, detect magical illnesses, or whisper forgotten incantations through the rustle of pipes. In the context of the magical school, bathrooms might also serve as a private sanctuary. Consider how often Harry and his friends find themselves hiding, crying, thinking, or planning within their tiled walls. Hermione brews polyjuice potion in the second-floor girls' bathroom for months. Cedric shares a clue in the prefect's bath. Draco Malfoy in Half-Blood Prince weeps alone in a bathroom before Harry nearly kills him with Sectum Sempra. These are places where defences are down and true selves are revealed. It is curious, then, that the films depict these rooms with minimal imagination. The second-floor girls' bathroom appears as grim and echoing, but without magical detail. The prefect's bath is never shown. The mystique of the vanished chamber pots, the ancient magical plumbing, and even the peculiar legacy of Moaning Myrtle's death remain largely untouched. This omission strips away part of Hogwarts' odd charm, smoothing out the quirks that make Rowling's world pulse with secret life. The use of lavatories as portals, hiding places, and magical intersections reinforces a broader theme in the books, that magic is everywhere, especially in the mundane. Hogwarts does not waste space. Every corridor hides a mystery, every painting a story, and every sink might conceal a monster. The films captured the grandeur, but they failed to capture the eerie intimacy of these places. There is magic in dripping taps and dusty mirrors, in cracked tiles and forgotten toilets. Even the enchanted nature of the bathrooms may suggest a deeper link to ancient magical systems, ones that blur the boundary between spellwork and living structure. Hogwarts' ability to generate necessary rooms, to hide passages in plumbing, and to anchor ghosts to sinks reflects a philosophy where no part of life, no matter how base, is untouched by enchantment. It is not enough for Hogwarts to be old, it must also be alive. The lore of the bathrooms also offers us glimpses into the unseen labour of magical maintenance. Who tends the pipes of Hogwarts? Who enchanted the mirrors to speak, or the sinks to react to Parseltongue? House elves, perhaps, with their silent knowledge of castle secrets. Dobby, Creature, Winky, creatures who maintain the unseen rhythms of the school, perhaps even ensuring that the bathrooms never flood, or that the magical plumbing does not backfire. Behind every enchanted faucet is an untold tale. Finally, the magical toilets of Hogwarts remind us that in the wizarding world there is no such thing as ordinary. A castle of moving staircases and talking portraits would never settle for Muggle plumbing alone. The bathrooms are more than just facilities. They are stages where memories are made, secrets exchanged, and magic hums softly beneath porcelain and stone. They are part of Hogwarts' ancient heartbeat, echoing through pipes and mirrors, in silence, in steam, in spells long forgotten. Number 19, potions. Class is seriously dangerous. In the shadowy depths of Hogwarts Castle, down a flight of cold, narrow stairs, the potions classroom waited like a chamber of alchemical secrets. The films offered flickering candlelight, rows of bottled ingredients, and the elegant menace of Severus Snape, but they never conveyed the true peril that simmered in every cauldron. To the viewer, potion-making appeared mysterious, dramatic, and oddly serene, students calmly stirring as Snape prowled the room. Yet in the books, potions was a battlefield. A single misstep could result in catastrophe, and the true gravity of these lessons was masked beneath the camera's polished gloss. The danger began not with the bubbling brews, but with the ingredients themselves. Consider the powdered root of asphodel, the crushed spine of lionfish, or the wrong strain of saprophoros bean. These weren't benign seasonings to be handled like herbs from a kitchen garden. Many were toxic, volatile, or caustic. One slip of the hand could unleash a chemical chain reaction too fast for even a seasoned wizard to halt. It was Hermione Granger, always meticulous, who understood this instinctively. Her diligence wasn't born merely from ambition, but from a clear awareness. Potions was not a subject where you could afford to be wrong. The films barely hinted at the kind of destruction a poorly made potion could cause. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, a brief scene shows Seamus Finnegan's cauldron cracking open, smoke pouring out. But in the books, moments like this were frequent and far more serious. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Neville Longbottom melted his cauldron in the very first lesson, drenching himself in the acidic contents. The resulting burns were serious enough that Madame Pomfrey had to rush him to the hospital wing, and Snape deducted points not out of cruelty, but frustration at a very real threat. "Idiot boy," Snape hissed in the book. "I suppose you added the porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire." The mistake wasn't theatrical, it was dangerous. The wrong sequence of steps could maim. There is a cold reason behind Snape's brutality, often misunderstood in cinematic adaptations. In the classroom, he was not merely a harsh teacher, but a watchman over young lives. Every botched potion could become an explosive hazard or a toxic vapor he could not afford to coddle. The tension he created was not just born from bitterness or favoritism, though both existed. It was in part an effort to instill fear and respect for a subject as unforgiving as transfiguration or dueling. The films reduced him to a gloomy figure with cutting remarks, but the books presented him as a necessary force against chaos. The most potent example of this came not from Neville's mishap, but from the unintended consequences of potion use. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when Ron accidentally consumes poisoned mead meant for Dumbledore, the danger of potions outside the classroom is made terrifyingly real. Ron collapses immediately, his skin turning pale, foam around his mouth. It takes quick thinking and a bezoar, an obscure antidote that Harry only remembers, thanks to Snape's earlier lessons, for Ron to survive. Here, the stakes of potion knowledge become life or death, not abstract school trivia. The true complexity of potion making also eluded the visual media. In the book Half-Blood Prince, Harry gains a copy of the Advanced Potions textbook filled with handwritten corrections and shortcuts. The instructions he follows from the Half-Blood Prince's notes often contradict the printed text, and they produce more effective results. One such instruction reads, "Crush with flat side of silver dagger not cut." This minor deviation transforms the outcome completely. It's not magic, it's chemistry at its most precise. Timing, pressure, heat, and sequence all affect the brew. The films gloss over these layers, simplifying the process into magical stirring rather than methodical experimentation. Snape's classroom was not only a space of danger but of revelation. Each ingredient had to be respected. Consider the Wolfsbane potion, which allows a werewolf to retain his mind during transformation. Its creation is so intricate and dangerous that only the most skilled potions masters can brew it. Snape does it for Remus Lupin in Prisoner of Azkaban, a fact that barely receives attention in the films, but which speaks volumes in the books. The potion is deadly if misprepared. It's not just a drink, it's a lifeline. Its successful preparation is an act of profound discipline and subtle kindness. Even the setting of the potion's classroom betrayed a quiet menace. In the Philosopher's Stone, the room is described as a gloomy, cavernous room with pickled animals floating in glass jars all around the walls. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and burnt ingredients. Accidents happened often, and they weren't treated as harmless pranks. They were punishable, not out of spite, but because distraction could kill. When Draco Malfoy tries to sabotage others by stealing ingredients or nudging elbows, it's more than childish mischief, it's reckless endangerment. Filmmakers also omitted a crucial educational reality. Not everyone was meant to succeed in potions. In the books, we see how students fail despite trying, how brewing is not about magic wands and incantations, but steady hands and sharp focus. Ron Weasley, for instance, struggles constantly, his mixtures exploding or turning the wrong color. When Harry begins excelling in Half-Blood Prince, it's not due to sudden talent, but because he's following the anonymous genius of Snape's notes. This subtle truth that most students were never truly safe in the lab is erased by the film's graceful visual montages. One moment from the books that encapsulates the quiet danger of the craft comes during the brewing of Polyjuice potion in Chamber of Secrets. Hermione, Harry, and Ron decide to brew it in the girls' bathroom, secretly and without guidance. The process takes a month, Hermione spends weeks carefully collecting illegal ingredients like boomslang skin and lacewing flies. The potion is thick, foul-smelling, and visibly reacts to each new addition. When Hermione mistakenly uses cat hair in her transformation, the result is horrifying. She is rushed to the hospital wing, partially transformed, and remains there for weeks. It's a graphic reminder that potions can alter the body permanently, and not always in predictable ways. Even the humour in potions is laced with fear. In Goblet of Fire, Fred and George attempt to trick the age line surrounding the Goblet of Fire by drinking an aging potion. It backfires immediately. The twins are thrown across the room, sprouting beards, their bodies distorted. It's played for laughs, but the consequences could have been far worse. Had they brewed the potion incorrectly, they might have aged irreversibly or poisoned themselves. This wasn't a prank gone wrong, it was a dangerous lesson masquerading as mischief. The students, despite their magical upbringing, approached potions with a kind of anxious reverence. In Order of the Phoenix, the pressure intensifies as they prepare for OWL examinations. The stress in the potions classroom becomes unbearable. Under Snape's unforgiving gaze, one wrong move means failure. Snape hovered over them like a vulture, watching as they tried to remember how many times they were supposed to stir the potion counterclockwise. This is not a whimsical subject. It's grueling, nerve-wracking, and relentless. Even house rivalry finds its cruelest outlet in potions class. Snape's open favoritism towards Slytherin students wasn't just emotional bias, it introduced real danger into the classroom dynamic. He ignored their mistakes while punishing Gryffindors for the smallest slip. In a room full of hazardous materials, this unequal treatment could have led to disaster. Harry and his friends had to work twice as hard just to stay safe, knowing that Snape might not intervene if something went wrong on their side of the room. The film's failure to show the risk of potions also diminishes the significance of Snape's brilliance. He isn't just a master of the subject, he's a revolutionary. The modifications he makes in his student textbook, the fact that he can brew wolfsbane safely, and his ability to produce Veritaserum, a truth serum banned for regular use, all of this speaks to an unmatched command of the craft. He is not simply enforcing rules, he's protecting students from their own ignorance. Potions also reveals the gap between magical and non-magical understanding. While Muggle chemistry and medicine are rooted in experimentation and peer-reviewed precision, potions at Hogwarts are learned by rote, steeped in mystery. Hermione often tries to bring method to the madness, and her approach shows us how potions could be studied scientifically, but even she, the most academic of students, makes grave errors when a single drop or second misaligns with the instructions. Magic does not forgive sloppiness, Tate. The psychological impact of these lessons is rarely addressed. For students like Neville, whose confidence was already fragile, potions was a daily ordeal. Being repeatedly burned, humiliated, and threatened wore down his spirit. He didn't just dislike the subject, he feared it. The classroom became a symbol of danger and inadequacy. That fear could stay with a student forever. And it was fear well-earned, not just a character flaw. Polyjuice, Amatentia, Felix Felicis, Draught of Living Death. Each of these potions carries immense power over identity, emotion, fate, and life itself. These are not classroom curiosities, they are tools that can change reality. The idea that a teenager could brew them unsupervised, or that the classroom was anything less than a crucible of risk, is naive. The books respected that risk. The films didn't. In truth, potion making is perhaps the closest subject to Muggle science at Hogwarts. It requires no wand movements, no spells. Instead, it's about observation, timing, and exactitude. It demands discipline and punishes negligence. It mirrors our own world's chemistry labs where volatile reactions occur under careful eyes, and just like in the real world, accidents are a matter of when, not if. Snape's role as potions master was not simply a job, it was a daily dance with disaster. The students he insulted, the errors he punished, the tension he fostered, It all stemmed from a truth the films never dared to tell. That potion-making in all its mystical glamour is perhaps the most dangerous subject taught at Hogwarts. And in that dark, smoke-filled dungeon, surrounded by jars of strange horrors, every student stood one mistake away from catastrophe. Number 20, the hospital wing has its own history. In the shadowed stillness of Hogwarts, beyond the boisterous halls and secret staircases, lay a space often overlooked by filmmakers, a sanctuary not for magic, but for recovery. The hospital wing of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, nestled in one of the quieter parts of the castle, is far more than a sterile room of beds and bandages. It is a witness to trauma, a keeper of secrets, and a battlefield where bodies and minds alike are mended. While the films gave it only fleeting glances, the books unveil its deeper significance, its function not only as a medical ward, but as a place where destinies are paused, re-evaluated, and reshaped. From the first time Harry Potter was admitted to the hospital wing in the Philosopher's Stone, it was clear this was no ordinary infirmary. After a savage encounter with Professor Quirrell and the possessed body of Voldemort, Harry awoke among the starched sheets, his head throbbing and limbs aching. Madame Pomfrey, the matron of this peculiar sanctuary, hovered like a watchful guardian, her touch gentle yet firm. She was not just administering potions, she was guiding him through his first confrontation with death. In the background, Dumbledore and the teachers made decisions that would change the course of the wizarding world, and Harry, barely conscious, lay in the hospital wing where fate seemed to hold its breath. Madame Poppy Pomfrey herself is a figure largely lost to the visual adaptations, her role condensed into fleeting appearances. But in the books, she emerges as a powerful character, more than a healer, almost a silent protector. She tends not only to physical injuries but also to psychological wounds. When Ron Weasley is poisoned by a tainted bottle of mead in The Half-Blood Prince, it is Madame Pomfrey who stabilizes him, acting swiftly with an antidote and placing him under careful surveillance. Her instincts, described by Dumbledore as almost prophetic, reflect the depth of magical medical knowledge few others possess. In the Chamber of Secrets, after Harry loses all the bones in his arm due to Gilderoy Lockhart's incompetence, it is Madame Pomfrey who regrows them overnight. "You will be able to, won't you?" Harry asked her, alarmed, his arm flopping like a length of rubber. "Oh, yes," she said briskly, "but it'll be painful." And painful it was, yet this act of regrowing bones, something unimaginable in the Muggle world, was routine for the Hogwarts matron. She did not flinch at magical anomalies, she mastered them. While the films showed this moment, they stripped it of its surrounding humanity, Harry's silent suffering, Pomfrey's clinical precision, and the sheer gravity of a spell gone wrong. The hospital wing became a recurring chamber of resolution. After the events of the Triwizard Tournament in the Goblet of Fire, Harry found himself there again, having witnessed the death of Cedric Diggory and Voldemort's return. The moment in the hospital wing is one of numb silence. Fudge denies the truth, McGonagall stands stiff with rage, and Harry, trembling, feels the weight of trauma crashing into him. "He's back," Harry whispers, and while the world continues to deny it, the hospital wing listens without judgment. In this quiet space, truth is allowed to echo unfiltered. Few recall that it was in the hospital wing that Neville Longbottom's secret pain was exposed. In Order of the Phoenix, after the disastrous battle at the Department of Mysteries, Neville's nose was broken and his body was bruised. But when he visits his parents in St. Mungo's on Christmas, we are reminded of his deeper wound, his silent burden. Later, back at Hogwarts, when he finds himself again in Pomfrey's care, there's no need for questions. She knows what he hides. Her hands work with care. Her tone remains neutral, but her presence speaks of empathy, a quiet understanding that she cannot heal what has long been shattered. And then there is Remus Lupin. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, after revealing himself to be a werewolf, he resigns his post. Though he isn't shown in the hospital wing in this moment, The books imply he had spent time there during his transformations. Pomfrey administered the wolfsbane potion each month and escorted him to the shrieking shack through the Whomping Willow. Her role in his containment and protection is never elaborated upon in the films, but the books honor her discreet service. She was his accomplice in survival, his silent defender. The hospital wing also bore witness to smaller but no less poignant struggles. When Katie Bell is cursed by a necklace in The Half-Blood Prince, she is rushed to the hospital wing before being transferred to St. Mungo's. The terror in the eyes of her friends, the paralysis in her limbs, and the inability of even Madame Pomfrey to fully diagnose the curse all speak to the gravity of magical injuries. The ward is not omnipotent. Sometimes even the best healer is forced to admit that a student must be handed to the higher care of St. Mungo's, but it is Hogwarts that responds first, always. After Harry's broomstick is destroyed by the Whomping Willow in The Prisoner of Azkaban, and he is nearly drowned by Dementors during a Quidditch match, he wakes up in the hospital wing with chocolate being pressed into his hands. "Eat it," said Madame Pomfrey. "It'll help." The restorative power of chocolate in the magical world may seem quaint, but here it symbolizes more than just physical recovery. It's warmth after cold, sweetness after fear. Pomfrey understands not only potions, but emotional medicine, her timing precise, her words measured. In Order of the Phoenix, after the attack on Arthur Weasley, the hospital wing becomes a space of vigil. The Weasley children sit anxiously in silence, each chair drawn close to the hospital bed. The faint glow of magical lanterns, the distant hush of footsteps in the corridor, these sensory details, vivid in the book, bring the room to life. It is here that grief lingers, hope flickers, and families huddle. Madame Pomfrey appears not as a healer now, but as a guardian of peace, moving quietly so as not to disturb the delicate balance between despair and faith. It was also in the hospital wing that one of Dumbledore's more mysterious interactions with Harry takes place. In The Philosopher's Stone, when Harry awakens after his first encounter with Voldemort, Dumbledore chooses this private room for their conversation. "What happened down in the dungeons between you and Professor Quirrell is a complete secret," he tells Harry. "This is not a classroom, not an office. It is the sanctuary of the wing, where truths are safe, guarded by walls that have heard screams, cries, and confessions." After the battle in the Department of Mysteries, the hospital wing becomes home to the wounded heroes of Dumbledore's army. Hermione, hit by a curse, Ron, mauled by brains, Ginny, limping from a broken ankle. They all lie in beds while Madame Pomfrey tends to them, her frustration bubbling over at the injuries caused by the Ministry's negligence. "I suppose this is all part of the training?" she snaps, but even then her focus is on care. She may disapprove of the adults, but the children, her charges, receive her undivided attention. One of the most haunting uses of the hospital wing is after Dumbledore's death. In The Half-Blood Prince, while the school mourns, the bodies of the injured are laid out there. Bill Weasley, mauled by Fenrir Greyback, is unconscious. His face is torn beyond recognition, but Fleur refuses to leave him. "I am good-looking enough for the both of us," she declares. The wing becomes a chamber of devotion, a place where love is tested, not just wounds treated. Madame Pomfrey stands by, respectfully silent, allowing these moments to unfold in private dignity. Even minor characters found refuge there. When Lavender Brown is attacked by Fenrir during the Battle of Hogwarts, she is brought to the hospital wing, barely alive. Her fate is ambiguous, but the location of her collapse is significant. It represents the boundary between life and death in Hogwarts. While some never leave it, Colin Creevey, Fred Weasley, others cling to its safety for one last breath. In the Deathly Hallows, during the final battle, the hospital wing becomes a triage centre. The wounded flood in, and Madame Pomfrey leads a team of volunteers and professors in tending to the injured. Though much of this is only mentioned in passing in the book, the emotional weight is enormous. The war has come home, and the hospital wing is the last bastion of compassion. No longer a quiet refuge, it becomes a chaotic hub of urgency, moans, spells, blood, and courage mixing in the air. The significance of magical healing in Hogwarts cannot be overstated. It is a field unto itself, demanding as much expertise as transfiguration or charms. Madame Pomfrey is no background character. She is a master of an arcane art. She knows which potion can mend shattered ribs, which charm can lift a coma, which plant essence can reverse minor hexes. She operates on intuition and experience, often with little help. There is no house elf staff, no secondary nurse. She is the heart of magical care. What the films failed to capture was the continuity of this care. Madame Pomfrey is one of the few constants across all of Harry's years. She is there when he wakes from his first major injury. She is there when the Dementors sap his soul. She is there when he loses Dumbledore and again when he wins the war. She doesn't fight in battles, but she cleans up after them. She doesn't lecture in classrooms, but she teaches through action. She is, in her quiet way, one of Hogwarts' unsung heroes. Hogwarts is not merely a school of learning, it is a place of becoming, and the hospital wing is where that becoming is often interrupted, challenged, or transformed. Every scar, every potion, every whispered encouragement from Madame Pomfrey is part of the student's journey. It is where Harry lay awake, thinking about Cedric, where Neville nursed injuries that no spell could erase, where Ron came to after being poisoned, where Hermione rested, too pale and too still, after Dolohof's curse. The hospital wing of Hogwarts is more than bricks and beds. It is a chamber of pause, a womb of renewal. Its silence carries stories the Great Hall never hears. Its walls know things the portraits don't whisper. And Madame Pomfrey, with her sharp eyes and tireless hands, stands between life and loss every single day. Her presence, though quietly written, is deeply felt. In every book, every year, she is there. The silent sentinel of healing, the gentle voice amid chaos, and the woman who could, quite literally, regrow your bones while the world outside tore itself apart. Number 21. The deeper meaning behind the Marauders map. In the quiet shadows of the Hogwarts castle, behind the enchanted tapestries and echoing stone corridors, there exists a legacy of magic not captured by moving staircases or Quidditch matches. The Marauders map, introduced in Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban, is remembered by filmgoers as a charming tool of mischief, a magical map that shows every person within the castle in real time. But readers of the books understand something far more profound. This map is not just parchment and ink, it is philosophy, it is rebellion, it is a living artifact of freedom, of friendship, and of the unspoken desire to outwit control in a world brimming with rules. The map was created by 4 young wizards, each one marked by complexity. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. They named themselves Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, identities carved from the deep, hidden parts of their lives. Lupin, the werewolf, Pettigrew, the rat, Animagus, Black, the grim dog, Potter, the proud stag. The act of making the map was not simply a project in magical cartography, it was a resistance against surveillance, an answer to authority, a coded expression of solidarity among boys who were discovering who they were beyond the robes and wands. When Lupin explains to Harry in the book, Messrs. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs offer their compliments to Professor Snape and request that he keep his abnormally large nose out of other people's business, the cheek of the map becomes clear. It mocks the figures of power with gleeful rebellion. It's not just a device, it speaks, it insults, it asserts personality. The films reduced this sentience to a whisper, but the books let it shout. More than a mere magical convenience, the Marauders map is Hogwarts through the eyes of its most defiant sons. To understand its importance, one must look at its origin. These were not students who blindly accepted the school's structure. They studied its gaps, its blind spots, its forgotten rooms, the room of requirement, the secret passages to Hogsmeade, even the Whomping Willow's hidden tunnel. These were not discoveries of the faculty. They were claimed by the Marauders through patient observation, shared exploration, and a deep curiosity that defied the curriculum. In constructing the map, they declared themselves watchers not only of their fellow students but of the whole castle. They turned the tables on authority. For once, it was the students who had eyes everywhere. This dynamic is essential. Hogwarts was a school of wonders, but also one of rules, punishments, and hierarchies. The Marauders' map was a tool of subversion, a magical counter-surveillance device in a place that prided itself on order. Even its activation phrase, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good," is more than clever wording. It is a mission statement. It invites the bearer to remember the purpose, to break the rules, not out of malice, but out of a hunger for truth and fun and freedom. And when the mischief is over, the map closes with a rebuke to anyone foolish enough to peek. Mischief managed. The language itself is part of the charm. It doesn't merely function, it performs, it recites, it teaches, it speaks in code, in character, in jest. It is a map with memory. When Harry uses the map, he is not simply walking in the footsteps of his father. He is inheriting a philosophy. The map teaches him the importance of knowing more than he is told, seeing more than he is shown. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry uses the map to monitor Draco Malfoy's whereabouts, but later, in Half-Blood Prince, it is the map that shows him Draco disappearing into the room of requirement, something even teachers cannot do. This is not just tactical advantage, it's insight, it's control reclaimed by a student. The films omit this heritage. They show Harry receiving the map from Fred and George Weasley, who themselves understood its rebellious essence. But they never dive into what it meant to them to discover an artifact made by rule-breakers handed down like a sacred relic. "We've never managed to work out how to make it again," said George in the book, admitting the brilliance of its design. This humility is essential. Even the best mischief makers of the next generation knew they were not its equal. Fred and George treated the map as scripture. They gave it to Harry not because he needed to sneak around, but because he had earned its philosophy. He was living it. He was defying Umbridge. He was assembling Dumbledore's army. He was continuing the unspoken mission of Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, to question, to resist, to explore. There's also a generational ache beneath the map. Each name etched into its creation represents a path now broken. James and Sirius, dead. Peter, a traitor. Remus, alone. The map is a living echo of a friendship shattered by war and betrayal. When Lupin sees it again in Prisoner of Azkaban, there is pain in his voice. The laughter of youth has become the silence of memory. Yet the map remains intact, still watching, still alive. It is through the map that Harry first begins to suspect that his father was more than a name in a photo. Seeing the names Padfoot and Prongs alerts him to his lineage, not of blood, but of spirit. The legacy is deeper than genetics. He is learning to live with mischief, with questions, with shadows. That is the core of the Marauders map. It is a tutorial in magical awareness and moral ambiguity. Even in Deathly Hallows, the map endures. While many items fall away in the final chaos, the map remains a touchstone. As the castle becomes a war zone, the idea of knowing every corner becomes a matter of survival. Neville Longbottom, Ginny Weasley, and others in the Resistance rely on the unseen knowledge passed down from the Marauders. The map is never shown, but its influence lingers. The films, driven by runtime and visual clarity, chose to simplify. They presented the map as a navigational device, like Google Maps for Hogwarts, but it was never just that. The Marauders map is Hogwarts itself, its breath, its bones, its every whisper. It is a time capsule built by those who dared to learn the castle better than its founders ever intended. And in the margins of that map, in its endless corridors and forgotten staircases, live the ghosts of young boys who refused to grow up safely. They saw rules as puzzles, not cages. They saw teachers as obstacles, not guides. They dared to write their names not in school records, but in the walls themselves. The magic required to build such a map is never detailed, but it is implied to be immense. Even Lupin admits it would have taken a group of very talented wizards to enchant the map. These were not just pranksters, they were visionaries, young, foolish, but brilliant. The map required not only spellcraft but empathy, an understanding of the castle's moods and the people within it. It is said the map can even recognize individuals in disguise. When Barty Crouch Jr., posing as Mad Eye Moody, walks the halls, the map sees through the polyjuice potion. What spell reveals truth like that? This is magic, born not from textbooks but from experience, experimentation, and shared genius. The books allow this complexity to simmer. They allow the map to function as both relic and compass, mirror and prophecy. In contrast, the films reduce it to a tool that Harry happens to own. There's no trace of the map's mischievous voice. No hint that it ever spoke at all. No acknowledgement of the philosophy woven into its parchment. The Marauders map represents a belief that knowledge belongs to those brave enough to seek it. Hogwarts is a maze, and the map is its Rosetta Stone. It decodes the institution, not just geographically, but spiritually. It whispers, you are not just a student, you are a player on the board, a writer in the margins, a mischief maker in the machinery. When Harry whispers the words to open the map, he is doing more than accessing information. He is invoking the spirits of the young men who once stood where he stands, who once asked the same questions, who once refused to be contained by school bells and prefect patrols. The map does not merely show Hogwarts, it is Hogwarts the way the Marauders saw it, chaotic, alive, hiding more than it reveals. The spirit of the map lingers in moments of quiet rebellion. When Harry uses it to wander into unknown areas, when Fred and George vanish from school on enchanted brooms, when Dumbledore's army meets in the Room of Requirement, all of it is haunted by the map's philosophy, not because it directed them, but because it inspired them. There is a line in Order of the Phoenix when Fred says, I think we've outgrown full-time education. It is spoken not with arrogance, but with clarity. The Marauders map taught him that there's a world beyond lessons, that life is not confined to essays and examinations. It taught him that magic is not only in spells, but in choices, in curiosity, in freedom. So, when the films use the map as a shortcut, they miss the long road it represents. They forget the footsteps of 4 boys who wandered every hall until it was their own, who loved the castle enough to question it, who built a philosophy into ink and parchment. The Marauders map is not a gadget, it is a gospel, and its mischief is not chaos, it is the quiet courage to learn the school in ways no teacher ever taught. Number 22, background magic in everyday life. Corridors of Hogwarts are not simply hallways of stone and torchlight. They breathe, they think, and sometimes they play tricks. More than once, Harry Potter found himself utterly lost on his way to a class he had attended dozens of times, but this wasn't because he was absent-minded. It was because the route had changed overnight. One morning, a passage would lead to the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. The next, it might guide a student directly into a suit of armor's belly, or worse, into a trick stair that swallowed one's foot whole. The movies gave us a Hogwarts of shadows and staircases, but not the living entity that the books so vividly brought to life. The castle's shifting nature wasn't a malfunction. It was part of its very essence, imbued with ancient enchantments so deep and so old that even Headmaster Dumbledore admitted he didn't fully understand them. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, we are told plainly Hogwarts was full of secrets. But these weren't just secrets hidden behind portraits and behind walls. These were secrets that moved. Hermione Granger's obsessive memorization of the school's floor plan did her little good, when the school simply decided to reconfigure itself. She quickly learned that magic laughed at certainty. There's the example of the hidden staircase behind the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. It appeared only on the second Thursday of every month, and only if you approached it humming "God rest ye merry hippogriffs." To a muggle-raised student like Dean Thomas, this was baffling. Hogwarts wasn't just unpredictable, it was willful, and it had a personality that didn't always favour order or logic. Perhaps the most iconic of Hogwarts's strange and shifting features were the staircases. There were 142 of them, according to Hermione, and they weren't content to stay still. One moment you were climbing toward the astronomy tower, the next you found yourself facing a wall of solid stone because the staircase had changed course mid-step. Ron Weasley once muttered that this place needs a sat-nav, and though said in jest, he wasn't wrong. But even a magical GPS would struggle to keep up with Hogwarts' mood swings. Filch, the school's bitter caretaker, often found himself outwitted by the very building he was meant to maintain. He once tried to trap Peeves in a corridor using a trick door he'd memorized. The door disappeared. The castle, it seemed, was not on his side. In fact, it rarely aided those who tried to impose rigid control. It responded better to intuition, creativity, and, at times, sheer luck. Luna Lovegood once found her way to the library by following the sound of whispering books. She wasn't surprised when she passed through a previously non-existent archway. Ravenclaw Tower offers one of the clearest examples of the castle's interactive consciousness. Students wishing to enter must answer a riddle posed by an enchanted bronze knocker in the shape of an eagle. Which came first, the phoenix or the flame? It might ask. If you answer incorrectly, you wait. There are no passwords, no tricks, no brute force. The door itself requires insight. It is not only enchanted but seemingly alive, choosing when to admit those it deems worthy. Even the Room of Requirement, a space of profound magical responsiveness, highlights this theme of adaptive architecture. When Dumbledore's army needed a safe haven, the room appeared only when the right desire, pure, precise, and persistent, was present in the mind of a student. The Room of Requirement only appears when a person has real need of it, Dobby explained. Sometimes it is there, sometimes it is not. It took the form of a training ground complete with cushions for stunning spells, shelves lined with useful books, and even a kettle for tea. But to a student needing a bathroom, it became a toilet. It was the castle's most blatant wink, a room that read thoughts and obeyed needs. The Marauders map, a magical document created by James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, was not just a record of Hogwarts' layout. It was a record of Hogwarts at that moment. The shifting footprints of people moving through the castle reflected real-time activity, but so did the paths. Sometimes corridors appeared on the map that didn't exist yesterday. Sometimes names flickered, as if the magic of the school was hesitating to decide whether a figure truly belonged in a certain space. Even portraits played their part in the school's dynamic nature. The fat lady guarding Gryffindor Tower could be startled, insulted, or simply wander off. Once, when attacked by Sirius Black, she fled her painting entirely. It took days to find her. During that time, Gryffindor students were forced to sleep in the common room under guard. The portrait's absence wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a disruption to the structure of the school itself. Without her, the entrance was sealed. The school's design depended on its magical inhabitants. Ghosts, too, influenced the flow of movement. The Bloody Baron was said to chill the air so severely in certain hallways that students avoided them altogether. Peeves the Poltergeist, although not a true ghost, frequently blocked passageways, rearranged suits of armor, or spilled ink down stairwells. The castle did little to stop him. It seemed to treat him more like a naughty pet than a threat. Peeves belonged to Hogwarts as surely as the bricks in the walls. Another instance lies in the disappearing chamber near the fourth-floor corridor, accessible only when the moonlight hit a particular stained glass window at the right angle. One student, a Hufflepuff named Elliot Meadows, claimed to have found it accidentally while returning from the owlery late at night. Inside, he found scrolls of forgotten enchantments and a harp playing by itself. He returned the next day. The hallway was blank. The window was still there, but the reflection was different. The door would never appear again. Seasonal changes affected the castle's personality. During the lead-up to Halloween, the corridors seemed darker even without a change in lighting. Jack-o'-lanterns floated near ceilings, whispering eerie lullabies. Doors creaked louder, the staircases moved more often. Hogwarts leaned into its own mythos, like a performer aware of the audience. Professor Flitwick once joked that the castle enjoys drama. When Christmas arrived, the mood softened. Fireplaces flared warmer, and the walls hummed faintly with carols no one could trace. No student experienced the castle's tricks more regularly than Neville Longbottom. He had an uncanny knack for ending up where he didn't intend to go. Once, he wandered into a secret herbology annex while searching for the charms classroom. The annex hadn't been catalogued in centuries. Professor Sprout was thrilled. "The castle shows itself to those who need it most," she said. Neville's natural empathy, his intuitive connection to living things, made him a favourite of the ancient stone giant he called home. The vanishing steps located on the third-floor staircase were a common prank played by the school. They looked like any other step, until your foot sank through them. "You have to remember which one it is," warned Fred Weasley, "or you'll be dangling like a puppet." The steps were not static. They changed positions periodically. Detention-worthy laughter could be heard when an unsuspecting Slytherin fell through one, especially if the culprit was a staircase playing favourites. It wasn't just mischief. The castle could protect. During the Battle of Hogwarts, the very stone of the building came alive. Statues sprang into motion. Walls hardened themselves against spells. "Hogwarts is threatened," Professor McGonagall cried as she brought the suits of armour to life. "Man the boundaries, protect us, do your duty to our school." And the castle obeyed. In that moment, its status as a sentient structure was undeniable. It fought back. It bled magic. Yet for all its mysteries, Hogwarts never ceased to be a sanctuary. For orphaned children like Harry, who had never known a home, the castle's sentience wasn't frightening. It was comforting. The walls seemed to hum with understanding. When Harry first arrived, he was lost in the twisting corridors. But by his 7th year, those same halls seemed to move with him rather than against him. He wasn't navigating Hogwarts anymore. He was being welcomed. The Room of Hidden Things, discovered by Draco Malfoy and later used by the Order, was another example of the castle's deep memory. Thousands of years of forgotten objects, dangerous relics and student secrets had collected in that space. It wasn't created in a moment. It had grown over time. The castle had allowed it to exist, to gather fragments of every generation. Hogwarts had a past that lingered physically within its walls. Beneath the castle, the Chamber of Secrets lay dormant for centuries, completely hidden. Only Parseltongue could reveal its entrance. The rest of the school existed above it, seemingly unaware, or perhaps pretending not to know. But when the chamber opened, something changed. A darkness seeped into the pipes and walls. The castle reacted subtly, making its displeasure known through groaning pipes, cold draughts, and flickering torches. It didn't scream. It whispered. Even the forbidden forest at the castle's edge sometimes felt like an extension of the school itself, wild, unpredictable, and sentient. Hagrid swore that certain trees moved when no one watched. Aragog, the giant spider, had once called it home. Centaurs roamed with ancient magic in their veins. All of it bordered Hogwarts like a living wall, as if the school had grown out of the forest's magic rather than been built beside it. Hogwarts is not just a place where magic is taught. It is magic. It's a living, breathing force shaped by centuries of student laughter, fear, longing, and discovery. The films captured the grandeur, the books revealed the soul. A staircase that shifts isn't just whimsical, it's a reminder. At Hogwarts, nothing is fixed, not walls, not rules, not even reality. The castle doesn't just house stories, it writes them. Number 23, magical pets with special abilities. Of all the things left out of the Harry Potter films, the quiet domestic pulse of Hogwarts, the heartbeat of everyday magic, may be the most regrettable. While battles and broomsticks stole the spotlight, the castle itself, with its peculiar hum of enchanted minutiae, faded into the background. Yet within the pages of J.K. Rowling's novels, Hogwarts lives and breathes through details so ordinary to its inhabitants that they barely warrant a mention, and yet they are the very threads that weave the tapestry of its realism. It is in these enchanted subtleties that the true soul of the school lies, not in dragons or Death Eaters, but in talking portraits, mischievous textbooks, and staircases that simply refuse to behave. In the Chamber of Secrets, when Harry finds himself in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, the textbooks are not neatly stacked. They are biting, hissing, and snapping at students. The Monster Book of Monsters is a particularly infamous example. It doesn't simply contain information about magical creatures, it is a magical creature in its own right. It had the look of a large, leather-bound book. Harry bent down to pick it up, but instead, the book opened its covers and snapped at him with what seemed like teeth. Such whimsical danger is hardly ever addressed in the films, which portray textbooks as inanimate objects rather than characters with their own personalities. The enchanted quills, for example, are part of the quiet undercurrent of Hogwarts life that films rarely touch. In the books, these quills are more than just writing instruments, they're companions. Some are self-inking, others take dictation, and some are designed to correct grammar or enhance penmanship. Hermione, always meticulous, is known for using a quick quotes quill, not the Rita Skeeter type that twists the truth, but the kind that makes lecture notes neat and legible. It is this attention to magical utility, charming the mundane into something special, that is so often overlooked. The ceilings of the Great Hall, enchanted to reflect the sky, are a celebrated detail, shown only briefly in the first film. But in the books, this magical ceiling isn't just an aesthetic marvel. It's a part of the students' daily rhythm, marking time and weather, reminding them of seasons passing. The ceiling was velvety black and dotted with stars, reads the Sorcerer's Stone, capturing a moment of wonder. This atmospheric charm grounds the setting in something more poetic than plot. And then there are the house elves, not as subjects of liberation politics, but as unseen orchestrators of the magical ecosystem. The beds in the dormitories make themselves, the fires are always stoked, and the food appears on the tables as if by miracle, because, in essence, it is. But it is the humble magic of consistency, of invisible labor, that makes the place feel lived in. Dobby's dedication to socks and Winky's sorrowful drinking tell deeper stories about the castle than any spell duel ever could. Inside the Gryffindor common room, the furniture isn't just worn, it's familiar. The armchairs puff slightly when someone sits in them, moulding to their shape. The tapestries whisper in ancient French when touched too roughly. Even the stairs up to the girls' dormitories are enchanted to turn into slides if a boy tries to climb them, an archaic, perhaps sexist charm, but one that shows how the castle is filled with opinions and boundaries. The films, for the most part, render these spaces as backdrops, robbing them of their eccentric character. The Room of Requirement is perhaps the most dramatic representation of practical magic, adapting itself to fit any need, but the books also show it in simpler forms. When Dobby hides Harry's gillyweed in the Goblet of Fire, he accesses a hidden kitchen full of house elves preparing feasts. The magic isn't just in the transformation, it's in the generosity, the comfort, the offer of warm food in a cold moment. The kitchens themselves, directly beneath the great hall, are filled with polished copper pots and pans that stir themselves, tables that mirror those above, and a scent of roasted meats that needs no wand to summon appetite. Corridors clean themselves, as do windows and floors. There is mention of brooms that sweep autonomously and brushes that scrub without hands. The castle is alive, not in the haunted sense, but in the domestic one. Magic here is maintenance, a soft rhythm that hums beneath the chaos. Peeves the poltergeist, a creature of chaotic magic himself, often undoes this work, turning ink pots upside down or stuffing keyholes with chewing gum, forcing the suits of armor to mutter complaints as they shuffle into new positions. Portraits play a far greater role in the novels than on screen. They move, yes, but they also converse, eavesdrop, and spread gossip. The fat lady doesn't merely guard the entrance to Gryffindor Tower. She sulks, demands apologies, sings badly, and occasionally gets drunk on fortified wine. Sir Cadogan, who temporarily replaces her, rides a fat little pony and challenges students to duels. These characters offer glimpses of Hogwarts history and personality that no set-piece battle ever could. Even the staircases, with their refusal to remain still, are treated more as mischievous companions than structural oddities. They didn't know that the staircases moved, Harry is told early on, and this one sentence hints at a world of complications, being late for class because a stair swung you to the wrong corridor, learning shortcuts that only appear on Tuesdays and passages that close if you whistle off key. The films show the movement once, but they never let the staircases misbehave. In the books, they misbehave constantly. Then there are the whispering cauldrons. In Half-Blood Prince, when Professor Slughorn teaches potion-making, some cauldrons bubble rhythmically, others emit scents of caramel or wood smoke, and some, particularly those being used by advanced students, murmur softly, suggesting instructions. It is not explicitly stated whether the whispers are magical echoes or part of the enchantment, but the effect is the same. The magic is a guide, not an order. The films often reduce potion class to ladling goo into a kettle. The book makes it a symphony. The Forbidden Forest is not only a realm of beasts and terror, but also of strangely natural enchantment. In the Philosopher's Stone, the centaurs speak in riddles and the trees seem to lean in. Hagrid's hut stands like a halfway point between civilization and wildness, with a fireplace that never fails and a kettle that whistles with indignation. Even his pumpkins, magically enlarged, grow in stubborn defiance of seasonality. These oddities reflect not spectacle, but quiet magic, abundant, generous, and slightly ridiculous. Inside classrooms, chalk writes on blackboards of its own accord. Skeletons twitch in their cases, and maps unfold to reveal their secrets without hands. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Lupin uses the boggart in the wardrobe not as a threat, but as a lesson in fear. The wardrobe itself shakes, groans, and even grows a pair of ominous eyes. But it's not all drama. There's charm in how these objects play along, as though they too have a role in the student's journey. Every holiday season, Hogwarts transforms, but not just through tinsel and baubles. The Christmas trees in the Great Hall sparkle with icicles that never melt. The suits of armor sing carols in gruff voices. The air smells of cinnamon and cloves. During the Half-Blood Prince, Harry notes that snow falls gently indoors, a kind of seasonal enchantment designed for comfort rather than defense. The castle, in these moments, becomes more than stone. It becomes sanctuary. All's delivering mail is a magical moment preserved in the films, but even here, the books go deeper. The Daily Mail is chaos. Dozens of owls swooping through windows, scattering feathers and biscuits, dropping parcels onto porridge bowls. 100 owls suddenly streamed into the hall, the book says, filling the room with a deafening din. Each owl knows its recipient, each letter finds its hand. It's a system both majestic and mundane, and, in its consistency, utterly real. The ghostly inhabitants of Hogwarts are not just visual flourishes, they participate in life. Nearly headless Nick throws parties, invites guests, and mourns his own beheading with the drama of a failed actor. The Grey Lady speaks only when compelled, hiding a deep pain and secret history. Even the Bloody Baron, terrifying and silent, is a part of the school's psyche. Their presence isn't theatrical, it's psychological, haunting the students not with fear, but with emotion. Fred and George Weasley's enchanted fireworks in Order of the Phoenix are not merely acts of rebellion. They're expressions of Hogwarts magic at its finest, lively, unsanctioned, and deeply personal. Catherine wheels spin and chase Umbridge, pink dragons breathe actual fire, and glowing letters form sarcastic slogans. This kind of wild creativity, born from magical knowledge and mischief, shows what the students can do when they take magic into their own hands. Finally, even magic itself, its theory, its misuse, its accidents, has a tactile presence in the books that the films rarely capture. Neville melting cauldrons, Seamus lighting things on fire, Hermione brewing polyjuice potion in a bathroom. These are not grand gestures. They are the growing pains of children learning to control something ancient and unpredictable. Magic here is not just a tool, it's an environment, a culture, a language spoken through gestures, ingredients, enchantments, and the persistent thrum of wonder. The films gave us heroes and battles, but the books gave us a home, a slightly mad, slightly haunted, entirely magical home where even the quills and teacups had secrets, and where nothing ever stayed quite the same from one moment to the next. To truly understand Hogwarts, one must look not to the battlefield, but to the common room, the kitchens, the classrooms, and the thousand whispered charms that keep its heart beating. Number 24, flying quills, talking books, and other everyday magical details. Hogwarts was never just a school. It was a breathing, ancient fortress teeming with magic in every corridor, behind every portrait, and, often forgotten, in every creature that moved within its walls. While the films captured the grandeur of its towers and the drama of its students' lives, they missed something essential, the deep, living bond between Hogwarts students and their animal companions. These were not mere pets. In J.K. Rowling's books, the animals that roamed the castle and slept at the foot of four-poster beds were not decorative. They were protectors, messengers, spies, and in some cases extensions of the very souls that cared for them. Take Hedwig, for example, not just a snowy owl, but Harry's first gift in the wizarding world. More than that, she was a symbol of his freedom, the first thing that was truly his after years of confinement at Privet Drive. Hedwig didn't just deliver letters. She navigated vast distances, understood complex human emotions, and even showed defiant loyalty. When Harry was confined by the Ministry and forbidden to use magic or leave home, Hedwig flew silently in the night, risking exposure to bring him news and connection. In the Order of the Phoenix, Harry reflects, Hedwig was the only creature in the house who did not treat him as though he were diseased. She was not only his owl, she was his confidant, and her death in the Deathly Hallows was not just the loss of a pet, but a deliberate narrative blow, stripping Harry of the last piece of his innocence. Crookshanks, Hermione's half-nasal cat, is another creature given depth and importance that the films fail to honor. His squashed face and bushy tail are not mere oddities. Rowling drops clues throughout The Prisoner of Azkaban that Crookshanks is no ordinary cat. He senses deceit. He recognizes Peter Pettigrew in his animagus form as Scabbers. He partners with Sirius Black, while the rest of the wizarding world believes Sirius to be a murderer. Crookshanks delivers messages, steals passwords, and aids in one of the series' most pivotal reveals. As the book puts it, Crookshanks darted forward, seized the bag, and dragged it toward the shadows. Not a trick any normal cat could manage. Even Neville Longbottom's toad, Trevor, often dismissed as a forgettable joke, carries layers unexplored on screen. Trevor is always escaping, always running, an echo of Neville's own insecurities and the secrets of his heritage. Some fans speculate Trevor was not simply clumsy or difficult, but perhaps aware of something Neville was not ready to face. As Neville grows into a brave leader and slayer of Nagini, one can't help but wonder whether Trevor's early mischief was a reflection of untapped power. Magical creatures often sense what humans do not. Fawkes the Phoenix, companion to Dumbledore, is a prime example of Rowling's layered creature lore. Introduced in The Chamber of Secrets, Fawkes is more than a regal bird who bursts into flames. He heals with his tears. He carries immense weight. He senses loyalty, saves Harry with his own song, and transports burdens too heavy for any other creature. His feathers are woven into the twin cores of Harry's and Voldemort's wands. His flight into the sunset after Dumbledore's death is not simply poetic, it is a final salute to a fallen comrade, a guardian of a legacy. As Rowling wrote, Fawkes circled the office once, then soared out into the air and vanished from sight. A quiet yet profound moment left untouched in the films. Hagrid's menagerie, often used as comic relief on screen, represents another dimension of the creature-human connection. Fang, his boarhound, is fiercely loyal and often accompanies students into danger, trembling but present. Aragog, the acromantula, though terrifying, is a testament to Hagrid's unorthodox compassion. But Buckbeak, renamed Witherwings later, is perhaps the most important of Hagrid's animals. A hippogriff, proud and noble, he forms a bond with Harry that transcends species. When Harry bows and is accepted, it is not just a magical gesture, it is a rite of passage, a test of humility and respect for life outside oneself. Harry bowed low and waited. Seconds ticked by. Then the hippogriff inclined his head, the book details, a moment of quiet triumph that earned Harry both trust and flight.